Hey, welcome to IndieQuest. Okay, I'm going to start over on that. I was not ready.
I like the hey start.
Hey.
We should start
Hey,
everyone
hey.
with the Crazy Taxi Offspring, the yeah.
Hey, everybody, welcome to IndieQuest, the celebration of the Indian obscure. Is that zany enough?
We can play some crazy games.
I thought we were really going for it there. I thought that was going to be the actual intro. All right.
No. Well, let's just do
I
it.
think
Let's
we're
just
here
do
now.
it. We're here.
Yeah, we're here. Yeah.
Welcome everybody. Welcome to IndieQuest. Hopefully you're all doing wonderfully. We're loose. We're in a good mood because today we're talking about certified bangers, I guess, like known classics. This is going to be our episode all about. That's not in the Ding Dang Quest log. Are you kidding me? We didn't already talk about that game, or maybe rather, while we've really referenced this game a lot when talking about other games, it would be helpful if it was on our quest log so people could go check it out and play it. So that's what we're talking about today. Hopefully you're all doing well. I'm going to introduce everyone, even though you heard all three of us in the intro, because formalities are important. So, Josh, how you doing today, my friend?
Oh, I'm having a really good weekend this weekend because Sarah's birthday's tomorrow, so we did a bunch of like celebrations. We went to Din Tai Fung. We ate way too much food, so much food so that I decided, okay, it's time to go to the gym this morning. You know, let's actually get on the elliptical. You know, that's how much food we ate yesterday. So, really good weekend. Threw them a party. It just me and them at our place party, but the joke lately is that Pedro Pascal's daddy, so I decided to find Pedro Pascal themed birthday merch and like put it all over the kitchen. So that was really fun. We had a really good time with that. So yeah, my weekend's been awesome. Just in a really good mood. Just chill. Nice, good time.
Heck yeah. Dude, I'm glad to hear it. I'm jealous of the food you ate. I was saying to the boys right before we started recording that I have a tummy ache because I ate too many Fig Newtons. So we're 2 for 2 on overindulgence. Let's find out what Seth ate too much of recently. Drachma, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing very well. The thing that I ate too much of today, have you guys seen in stores what I would call knockoff freeze-dried candy?
Yeah.
They are either Skittles or really. They are
Never seen this.
really, really good. I honestly love them. I can't remember who got them the first time. If it was maybe my stepson brought some home, but it was Skittles the first time. And you can't really tell in the bag what they're going to be. So I grabbed what I knew wasn't Skittles this time, or was either maybe a different flavor of Skittles. Chewy Sprees this time. Very good. And they go down, it's almost like you're eating candy, but at the same time, it feels like you're eating popcorn. That's the way they kind of chew. So it makes you feel like you can eat a lot of them until you're like, oh, now I don't really feel very good anymore. I need to stop eating these. And they're not exactly cheap either, but you can go through a bag very quickly. So that was the thing that I ate too much of today. Chewy Sprees that were no longer chewy due to freeze drying.
Interesting. I'm showing my ignorance here. I thought is freeze drying not the process? How does that differ from dehydrating, I guess?
I don't know how much it does differ at all. Honestly, I have considered looking into the process that they're doing because this is so new. And also, I think the thing I'm most intrigued about is the fact that this random company can take clearly other companies' candy, freeze dry it or whatever they're doing, and then re-put it back into their own bag and sell it again for a higher price. Yeah, because when you get the Skittles, they literally have S's on them. They are Skittles.
Yeah.
I've had on the packaging. Does it say freeze dried Skittles or is it like oodles of Scoodles?
Exactly that.
Yeah,
it is. It is the most knockoff Kmart thing ever. It is so strange. I don't know how they can get away with it. There must be a loophole because I imagine Mars or like the big companies would be going after them if they're not allowed. So it's kind of cool.
Interesting.
I don't know. Keep it up while you can, I guess.
Yeah, I got some when I went to the Puyallup Fair. like I think it was last year or something like that, but it's been like a big thing on TikTok. So pretty much when you
really?
Yeah, I think it's become trendy with the kids, the kids and their TikToks, and so they basically poof up like, I don't know, like you said, like popcorn, and they're just crunch. So basically it makes the one I've tried was a sour Skittle, so it was like crunchy sour Skittles. Basically it tastes the same, it's just a different texture, so it's kind of cool.
Yeah, it is interesting, and it makes you realize that you're not only eating a thing for the taste. you're also eating it for the texture, the experience of it, because it is a very different feeling to eating Chewy Sprees, right? Or Skittles. So it's just weird. But yeah, that's what I've been eating today.
Heck yeah. I will obviously be looking at my local grocer for these as soon as I can, because it sounds like something I can get down with.
Mm-hmm. Steve, how are you doing? Huh?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm doing wonderful. Other than the Fig Newton tummy ache, just hanging out. The kid's asleep. I'm excited to talk about some good games. It's not indie, but I spent all day playing Dragon Quest VI, basically. Leveling up my vocations. Got all 4 pieces of legendary equipment. You know how I do. You know how I do.
You're way ahead of me now. That means. For sure.
We can talk offline. I don't think so. 'Cause you're way ahead of me in terms of vocation stuff. So, but that's for an entirely different podcast. All right, you don't get to you IndieQuest listeners. You don't get to hear about my Dragon Quest VI experience. All right, you got to go elsewhere on the internet for that.
And you'll never get to hear about my Dragon Quest experience ever. So sorry, but
I've been playing an indie game lately called. Have you guys heard of this one? It's called Hollow Knight. It's a little lesser known indie. Under the radar here.
It is under the radar.
Pretty sure that's vaporware, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, maybe the sequel is at this point, but I just beat the Soul Master. That was pretty fun. I did that right before we got on here, so I went through that whole Soul Asylum type place. Yeah. So working my way through that one. Eventually, we'll probably do a podcast about it. But I was like. So I played that game Bo a month ago or whatever it was, and I'm like,
yeah,
I need some more of that. And then I played Hollow Knight. I was like, wow, this is just that, but kind of better, So yeah, but anyway, yeah, I've been enjoying that.
I like that idea. I like meeting the person that has never played formative works in a particular genre, but they've only played the also ran copycats. Someone that's never played Super Mario 64, but they've played Poi and Super Lucky's Tale, and they're like, oh my god, oh my god, there's a Mario that plays like this? That's amazing.
It's pretty much the case.
Man.
Yeah, and then I was like, it's so much like Bo. I keep comparing. I was like, but it's the other way around. Because the boss run back to the boss, and the map not showing the character unless you have the item equipped and things like that. That's in Bo, and it's just it's so much like Hollow Knight. So obviously an incredible game. So definitely going to keep working through that.
I like how now people listening are thinking, oh, nice, he's going to bring Hollow Knight to this episode about popular indies they haven't brought to the show. But it's no, for some reason he's just playing that in addition to whatever popular indie he brought. So
I mean, we can't have a popular indie podcast and not talk about Hollow Knight at least once. So it makes sense, Josh. I appreciate you for doing that.
It's true. We got to keep that in the SEO rotation. All right, we got to make sure that every episode we can tag with Hollow Knight just in case.
Just in case, yeah. Silksong pops next week. We're like, okay, well at least that's in the SEO, right? Yeah,
yeah, we got there.
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit at the top here, any games you guys are looking forward to coming out, because I'm super stoked. They actually finally announced what's it called, Plucky Squire's release date, which is pretty awesome. Yeah. When is that coming out? September. I should have it right in front of me, but I don't. September 17th. So that looks really good. And we've talked about it before on here, it's kind of like Link Between Worlds / a 3D platformer type vibes, and really cool art style. Goes between 2D and 3D. It's also going to be on PS Plus and Game Pass. So if you guys have any of those services, play it. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be hard for me to say this is not going to be one of the ones we talk about a lot going forward once we play it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've been anticipating this one for a while. I think it's even shown up in past episodes or something that we've done around anticipated games. So I can't wait. September is maybe the worst possible month to have launched it because it is a jam-packed month. There's so much
Astrobot
coming.
Be right before that, right? I know it's not indie, but I'm gonna be playing Astrobot, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of non-indies, Astrobot, and at the end of that month, we have the new Legend of Zelda game coming out. But then there's indie stuff launching in September too that I'm excited for. So
yeah,
got Demon School coming out on the 13th. I don't know if either of you guys have been following that one at all, but that game looks so sick. Cannot wait for that one. UFO 50's coming out September
yeah.
18th. So that's one of my most anticipated games. It's just a good time.
I have got a game coming out this week, actually, that I'm excited for. But I will not be mentioning it on this podcast because I have a strong feeling that I will bring it to the next episode.
Oh.
So you'll all
Spoiler
have to
alert.
sit on the edge of your seats for one more episode for that. But I did want to mention a game that it doesn't have a release date yet, but it does finally have trailers for that I've been following very closely. And I wonder if either of you have heard of it. It's called Kingdoms of the Dump.
No.
I have not heard of that, but great name.
It looks... Go ahead, Josh.
I was gonna say, there's always a moment where this is a thing that I've noticed, doing the podcast with you for so long. There's a moment where you say a name that Steve and we both look at the camera no, we never heard of that. Almost every time you say a name of a game. So just saying that. Anyway,
I have a strong feeling that this game is going to be an undercover cult classic to start, and then there's going to be some turbulence around it as it gets going. Right? Mm. It is basically not a straight ripoff, but it does a lot of things that Chrono Trigger does and looks incredible. Yeah. I don't even remember how I found it. I think maybe every once in a while I'll get notifications on my phone when I go to my Chrome browser, and I'll scroll down and there's something about an indie game coming up because I look up indie game stuff all the time. And maybe that's how I found it. There's this game coming out and not sure when, but we did an interview with the creators or something. As soon as I saw screenshots, and I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot wait for this game. I am so excited for it. And this might be a day one game. I'm assuming it doesn't have a release date yet, but I would assume based on trailers coming out that it probably releases next year at some point, hopefully early next year at some point. But yeah, I think it looks incredible. It's like a trash-based Chrono Trigger. You play as a trash can.
Yeah. So. It's literally what if you merged Chrono Trigger or Final Fantasy VI and Machinarium or something.
Yes. Such
an odd mashup, but wow, this looks cool as heck.
Yeah, looks awesome. There's a game coming out. I don't know if I should tell you guys about this one. That's fine. This seems like a game that I could see both of you guys enjoying. It's called Bloomstown. It's all Bloomstown, A Different Story is the full name. It's a narrative JRPG. It has turn-based combat, and it's a social RPG as well, set in 1960s Americana, and it has kind of like a Pokemon collector's vibe, has nice pixel graphics, a little bit of a horror vibes going. So this might be like a good Halloween spooky season game to play through. Definitely one I just randomly came across this trailer a few days ago, and it's coming out in the 24th next month. So I was like, this looks really cool.
It's funny you mention that because Super Derek RPGs, the YouTube channel I follow, he just did, I think his most recent video was on Bloomstown.
Nice.
I didn't watch much of it yet, but now I'm going to want to go back now that you mentioned it. But I mean, he was just talking about how excited he was for it to release in a month and stuff like that. So very cool.
It's like if you gave Pokemon a little bit of a horror, set it in the real world and gave it a little bit of a horror theme to it. So I think that's just a kind of cool combo.
While we're on RPGs, if you guys haven't checked out Astromeda, that I think is a little bit more in the public eye because I've seen a lot of stuff about Astromeda. Another RPG, and it gives me some Earthbound vibes from what I recall. It's on my wish list currently. I have not. But yeah, it gives some Undertale Earthbound vibes. Looks very cool. So I'm excited for that one. That one actually does have a loose release date of at some point in 2025. So
the behind the back perspective of the battles in screenshots of this game reminds me a lot of Meg's Monster.
Yeah, it does do that too. Yep, for sure. I think it's going to be a little bit more RPG-y than Meg's Monster was, I would assume, right? More focused on the RPG aspects, less on the story aspect. Well, I mean, I'm sure it has a decent story, but Meg's Monster was let's put a fun RPG battle system in there and then have the story still be at the forefront, right? So, but yeah.
Dang. Well, there you go, people. 3 indie RPGs coming in the nearish future that all look awesome, and now I need to find time for all of them.
I know it's gonna be a packed fall. Like it's just like everything's adding up more and more as it goes through. So
there's just too much. We need to get like a council of the indie podcasts out there. You know, there's many an indie podcast you can choose to listen to. Hey, thank you for choosing this one, by the way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we need to get, folks from all those together, big group meeting, and just divvy up these games evenly so we can make sure that we all spread the coverage out and point people in all of these cool directions.
yeah, and I'll just do like 3 quick shout outs just because I have them on top of my head. Core Keeper is coming out 1.0, which is like a sandbox survival, like Terraria, like Stardew type game, which looks really fun. I've seen some gameplay. That's going to be on Game Pass also, which I keep that in the back of my head because it's like it's such a good value. Anyway, and then Squirrel with a Gun's coming out, which we referenced when we talked about Another Krebs Treasure, and then last but not least is Wild Bastards is coming out, which if you guys ever played Void, what's not Void Bastards, right? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
The first one. Yeah, so it's the sequel to that, which is set instead of like on the spaceships, it's set on different planets, which is like a first person, like cell shaded, like really fun art roguelike. So looks really cool.
Very cool. And then there's like 2,000 games that we didn't mention that are also coming out. And
Yeah,
will
I can
also
keep
be
going.
Good, so sorry about
we can
that.
make a whole we can make a whole episode like that, right? Just keep on going through the release dates, like just talk about it for like 2 or 3 hours probably at this point. So
No kidding. Well, there you go. Some cool stuff coming up in the near future. But now, some cool stuff that we're bringing to the show today. Who wants to go first? All right. Who amongst us wants to stick their neck out and say, "I volunteer"? All right, I'll go. I'll go because you guys are being quiet. How about that? Look at that. I jumped in to not have to make the decision, and then I'm falling on the sword anyways.
You also have to explain the quest log, Steve. That's partially why I didn't want to go first.
All right, folks. So we're going to bring a game and add it to the quest log. Quest log is our giant, long-running list of every game that we recommend that you check out that is of an indie variety. If you want to check out what that list is, it's at IndieQuestPod.com, and it's split into 2 sections. The main quest, which is our double thumbs up, high recommendation for pretty much anybody, top tier experience, 9 or 10 out of 10, certified banger, however you want to say it. If it's on that list, we give you a big toothy grin when we recommend it to you. Side quest, still great. This is our single thumbs up. This is our toothless grin, but still a smile. It's us saying, hey, there might be 1 or 2 things about this that maybe are a little rougher around the edges, or maybe this is a little more, suited to the tastes of a particular type of person over a wider audience, or maybe there's just a couple of hitches here and there that brought it down just a bit. But by the nature of us bringing it to the show at all, we're saying, hey, we recommend this game. We don't bring anything that we don't recommend. So if you see it on either of those lists, take it as an endorsement and take it as a recommendation for something that you might be interested in. So, with that said, I'm going to go ahead and add a game to that list because that's what they pay me the big bucks for. So, folks, I sat down with myself and I said, we need to bring games that have clout, that have name recognition, but at the same time fall into a unique position of maybe not so much name recognition that I think that we would do a unique episode entirely about this game. So that's why none of us brought Hollow Knight, because we've just had that sitting in the chamber waiting for a Hollow Knight episode. And so I was like, all right, what can I do? Not part of maybe a series, because, sometimes we like to do series as we're currently doing with the Supergiant games. And I said to myself, the most important factor, all right, the number 1 condition to bringing a game to this episode is, what have I already played this year so that I don't have to play anything new for the show because I'm kind of busy right now. And as a result, I'm bringing a game that I absolutely love. It is The Messenger. Now,
okay.
Not only is The Messenger a great game, but it also completes our Sabotage Studios quest log inclusion.
Yeah.
Following this discussion, there will not be a Sabotage Studios game that we have not placed on the quest log. Congratulations to Sabotage Studio. It's an elite club. So Messenger is a side-scrolling ninja action game, obviously developed by Sabotage Studios. It is published by Devolver Digital, so checks that box for Drachma's ultimate goal to bring every Devolver Digital game. It was originally released on August 30th, 2018. So this game is 6 years old at this point, getting almost 6 years old to the day. Pretty close. And as of now, it is currently available on PC, Switch, PS4, Xbox One, and then obviously on the Xbox Series and PS5 as a result of being on the backwards compatible platforms. So you can play it pretty much anywhere. You'll be able, it is not a demanding game. So if you have like a Steam Deck or something, this would be a perfect game to play on your Steam Deck. It would run awesome. Most devices you have are going to run this thing buttery smooth. Even the older generation consoles play this game great. Now, I said it's a ninja side-scrolling action platformer. It is very much a game that looked at Ninja Gaiden and said, how can we do that, but in 2018? In fact, I pulled a quote off of Sabotage Studios' website because I think it's pretty definitive in terms of like what their philosophy is when they're developing their games. And that's true of this and of Sea of Stars, which is the other game that they've put out that we've also talked about. They say Sabotage's mission was always clear: to create our own definitive editions of the game genres we enjoyed as kids. So you can see this in both of their releases, Sea of Stars and The Messenger, that their goal is to take like the games you loved and make a new game that plays like you remember the old game playing. And I say that as a huge retro fan. I'm not trying to knock older games. Chrono Trigger is one of my all-time favorites. The clear inspiration for Sea of Stars. I love Ninja Gaiden. So those old games play great, but I do understand the desire to sort of package that up with some more modern bells and whistles, tune it to a newer audience, add some features that they couldn't have added in those old games, and make something new that feels like that. So, in The Messenger, it is obviously a side-scrolling action platformer, like I mentioned, which means you're going to be doing a lot of left-to-right running. Your goal in the game, your sort of like mission that you're set out upon, is you're in this training village of other ninjas, and through circumstances that honestly don't really matter that much, essentially you are you're given the task to deliver a message across the world to help prevent this demon invasion that is occurring. And so you're handed a scroll, and you're literally sent to be a messenger, a runner, to deliver this across the world. You're going to do that by going over a whole big variety of locations. You're going to go across, caves, volcanoes, icy mountains, and a whole bunch of stuff. Before I get into sort of like the meat and potatoes of how the game plays, I will say, even though this is a 6-year-old game, I'm going to talk through kind of the core details here. I'm going to give you just a little bit of a spoiler warning and then talk about a little stuff on the other side of the wall. So if you've never played this game before and you want to go in completely fresh and you've avoided everything about it to this point, you can either jump ahead now, or I'll give you a heads up before I go into that little spoiler section, and then you can jump ahead at that point. We always have timestamps in the show notes for when we each start talking about a game, so you can just skip over to whoever goes next and go from there. But
I do want to know quickly before you even move past this point, Steve. Josh, have you played The Messenger?
I have attempted to play some of it, but I have never beat the game. But I do know what the spoiler is Steve's going to be talking about. I know what happens and things, I think. So, yeah, I've tried it, but I haven't beat it. I've probably played like an hour of it, honestly. So,
okay. I have not played any of The Messenger, but I imagine I know what Steve's talking about just because I think I've heard. And I was actually going to ask this question.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's in the trailer itself. If you watch the trailer, you can see what he's about to talk about. So it's not like it's a huge spoiler ever. So
yeah, and that's why it's not going to be like a whole big spoiler discussion at the end. There's just sort of one mechanical thing I want to wrap up my thoughts by including. And if you have gone into this game blind, I think it would be more fun to not know. So I'll in an abundance of caution, we'll give you a little bit of a gate there. Other than my two co-hosts, who I will spoil mercilessly and with no guilt at all.
Okay.
So you're going to be navigating these different environments. You get kind of the basic run of ninja tools. Like if we were playing Family Feud and I said, name one item that you get in a ninja action game on an 8-bit console, you could probably list pretty much all the abilities that you're going to get. You'd be like, some sort of grappling or rope mechanism, shurikens, any number, a sword that we can slash, all that stuff. You're going to get all that. They pretty much all in different ways are a mix of combat and exploration abilities. Some lean more in one direction or the other, but they pretty much all have utility in both of those categories, which I think is cool. It makes it so that as you're navigating these worlds, you're still using your abilities even outside of combat, and it makes it feel a little bit more cohesive. And that's important because something that I would really highlight about this game right out the gate is that there's a real sense of flow to it, especially once you have played a few of the levels. It is the type of game where not even like to the point of doing a speed run, but just once you're familiar with the levels, you can almost hold right and just like constantly run the entire time and be like jumping and slashing through enemies at strategic times, and you'll just have like this Mirror's Edge style flow state. You'll just never need to stop. You'll always be able to sort of either weave between enemies, attack enemies at the right point. They clearly designed it in such a way where it's almost like every screen or every run of screens is like a little mini like movement puzzle to solve. And if you figure out the exact way to do it right, you're just going to feel cool.
That is, to me, very Ninja Gaiden or early Castlevania. Like you run, they're tough, right? So you run through the exact same piece of a level 20 times. And by the 20th time, you know exactly where the Medusa head's going to pop. You know exactly where the bird's going to come in Ninja Gaiden. And you're jumping before they even get there to slash. So that's kind of awesome that they captured that.
Yeah, it was clearly very important to them. There's a lot of little decisions that go into that. Like, you know, enemies are pretty much always of a height that you can clear them with a jump if you time it just right. If you slash your sword while running, you don't lose any momentum. You keep running while you sword slash, so you don't have to stand in place and attack enemies, things like that. There's often like platforms or multiple kind of levels to where you are, so you can sort of develop almost like racing lines of like, okay, I know that I'm going to need to hop over this enemy, jump up to this ledge up here, then jump up to this little tiny ledge up top and do a big leap over, and I'll land just past this other enemy, and you can keep moving, stuff like that. And there's no time mechanic. It's not like these levels have a timer in the upper corner or anything like that. It's just, I don't know, it's what you want to do as a ninja. You want to feel like you can constantly just keep moving forward. But that said, there is some incentive for exploring around in some nooks and crannies. The most front and center of those is going to be that you get these collectible crystals. I'm not honestly sure what the name of the currency is in the game, but it is a currency that you'll get out of killing enemies. You'll get it out of lanterns that are scattered all over the world, and you'll be able to then take those into various shops at certain points in the game and buy upgrades that are either be movement upgrades or combat upgrades, or in some cases things that function as both, right? So you'll be able to increase health and damage like you'd expect to, but also give you a variety of different interesting movement tech. And I would say the most important one of those, which is you will get so early and is so cheap that you might as well just consider it part of your core toolkit, is what this game calls the Cloud Step, which is an ability that every time you slash an enemy, you slash one of these like, you know, interactable environmental objects, or a little bit later slash enemy projectiles, while in midair, you will reset your jump and you'll be able to jump in midair. And so that, coupled with what I was just saying about the momentum, means that now you're able to like run and not even have to kill enemies. You can jump up onto a platform or an enemy, as slash it once to reset your jump, and then jump over it. And, you know, maybe slash an enemy that just launched a fireball at you, slash the fireball, jump up past that, hit a lantern that's in the environment. You actually can like traverse a lot of screens entirely in midair by just chaining sword slash jumps off of each other as you go around, which means that you are exploring, you know, horizontal levels like you'd expect in Ninja Gaiden, but there is a real verticality to it. And sometimes you're actually exploring, you know, sometimes you're having to navigate up to like little tiny screens or little tiny ledges at the top of the screen that seem impossible to reach. It's just this massive chasm, but maybe you need to wait to time enemy attacks in the right way, or, you know, guide bats over there so you can use them as sort of stepping stools to cloud step off of them. And that, I think, that's the most important part of the movement tech. That's like the throwing your cap out and diving onto it in Mario Odyssey of this game. It's the core cool shit that you'll get that means the whole rest of the game feels fun.
I like that they do things like that in this game, or in a lot of more modern indies mostly, that are doing like these retro styled games, right? Because those are the types of things that couldn't really, like, even if they had thought of them in the retro, like actual retro games on the retro systems, in a lot of ways there were limitations on those systems that would have just made it so janky to move that fast across the screen, right? So that's where it's nice where you can use this style in a game that looks like games that we played before, but they can make it so fast compared to those types of games. So
Yeah, very much so. And that's, I think, one of those examples of modernizing it that is sort of in their company mission. So it is, the levels are sort of like continuous, but it is set up in a pretty traditional level structure. You know, you'll run through a forest environment, you'll fight a boss at the end, and then you'll transition to like a cave environment, navigate that, fight a boss at the end, stuff like that. So a very familiar structure to the game. As you're exploring around and getting these upgrades, obviously at various times you are going to die. And this game has, I guess, like an inversion of the Dark Souls punishment style. So rather than leaving your currency and having to fight your way back to it, instead, when you die, you are revived by this little demon creature, and he basically has a fee that you need to pay him, which means that as you navigate the level, a certain number of the currency crystals that you will collect from the point that you respawn, he will collect instead, and you won't actually get to collect those. So rather than lose 100 currency, the next 100 that you would collect goes to him. And so you still lose a little bit of your ability to buy upgrades, but it's less punishing because it's not like you get stuck at one part and suddenly you have no money and can't buy things anymore. You'll always have your cash. It just changes basically the rate that you can acquire it, which is pretty nice.
Sorry, my question was, is this kind of like it's only level based, or do they have like, is it like gated exploration where you like get new abilities that unlock new areas and things like that? Or do you need to double back to old levels to like, oh, I need to actually get up on the top of that area in the previous level, or is that a thing?
It is linear, but there is some exploration that you're going to be doing. So depending on when you buy or find certain upgrades, there will be things that are or are not accessible to you at that point. So yeah, it's not Super Metroid or anything like that. Like it has a linear progression, but there is a little bit of flavor of that.
if someone used the messenger for the Metroidvania Square and Polykill Bingo, Steve, would you allow it?
I would.
Okay.
I would permit it.
All right.
For a game like this, it has more of a story than you might think. I mean, obviously I gave you the setup, but maybe not even story is not the right word so much as just like relatively fun writing. I think that the game does a good job balancing its tone, like still having its own story and still like, you know, having enough drama to make it interesting, but it has that sort of like self-aware modern humor that certain games have. Like, I don't know that there actually is specifically this within the game, but it's the type of game that you wouldn't be surprised to see a Rickroll reference in, like them, like either having one of the lyrics from the song or mentioning a Rickroll or something. It's that type of game. It's like aware that a human is playing it. But unlike a lot of games that have that sense of humor, I would say that this one mostly sticks the landing. Like, it's done tastefully enough and is not quite as embarrassing as some examples of that type of humor. And so I'm like, all right, yeah. Like, I'm playing. I have a smile on my face. They do some good trolls, have some good jokes. It's all in all, it's well done.
It's like, what's the scale between 0 to Borderlands 3? Like, where's the,
Yeah. You get too close to the Borderlands 3, it's like getting pulled into the gravitational orbit of the sun in Outer Wilds. At some point, you're just going to burn up. There's not nothing you can do. You've gone too far. But yeah, so that's how the game generally plays. Very fun. Good difficulty, I would say. Much easier than like a Ninja Gaiden, but still difficult. You'll still be proud of being able to defeat bosses, and there still will be bosses that you'll certainly die multiple times on, or sections that you'll die multiple times on. And there are some pretty punishing parts where there's, you know, the occasional like instant death pit or platform, things like that. So in terms of general gameplay, any questions, thoughts that you guys have?
I don't think so. I think it sounds like more Ninja Gaiden, which is what I was hoping to get from a retro-styled modern ninja game. Which is good.
Yep. It is that. Very much so. It's got a fun look to it. It's got fun character designs. It looks different from a lot of other games, which is not always the case with like these retro throwback platformers. It is a little bit of the Shovel Knight thing where it is using the aesthetics of those old consoles, but with their own style, with their own flair, and in a way that obviously is way more technically intensive than anything that would have been possible on an NES or an 8-bit console. So you're going to definitely appreciate it in motion. It's a very colorful game, lots of different varieties in locations, almost no stereotypes, I guess, of that genre. Like all the bosses are something that you would never in a million years would guess would be in a game like this. They all kind of come out of nowhere and are relatively surprising. Even the things that, lean on kind of tropey aspects of these games, like like dragons or something, are done in a very fresh way where they obviously were aware that they wanted to keep it interesting. I mean, I can't really say enough positive things about the soundtrack. I mean, anyone that played Sea of Stars knows that that's bangers top to bottom. I think the first IQ OST episode, I brought a song from The Messenger because it was like the first indie game that came to my mind in terms of good music. Genuinely one of the better soundtracks out there, like full stop. I would put it up there with like the Undertales of the world and things like that. Citizen Sleepers and some of my all-time favorites.
Honestly, that's one reason I'm most excited to visit The Messenger, hopefully sometime soon, is because I love the Sea of Stars soundtrack so much, and I know a lot of it is just remixes from The Messenger. So I want to hear that Sea of Stars, but in the older chiptune style that they do in The Messenger. Like, that's very fun.
Yeah, and it's again, it's more than the NES could ever pump out, but it's so catchy in the way that a lot of those old classic NES songs are catchy. And then on top of all that, like variety to soundtrack and visuals and all that, they actually released a free DLC like expansion a year or two after the game came out called Picnic Panic, which is like a beach episode, like tropical side story that has a bunch more great music and like this whole other different sort of like more tongue-in-cheek, like tiki drink kind of art style and vibe to it. So it's all really good. But there's something else we need to talk about, folks, and it's behind the spoiler wall. So this is your opportunity. Click ahead if you don't want to hear it. I mean, you're going to also miss where I put it on the quest log, but you could probably guess. And you could probably go check the quest log if you really want to know. Sorry if you want to see that dramatic reveal, but it'll be okay. It'll be okay. All right, I'm giving them time to clear out. I don't think that anyone's actually leaving, but if they are, you're welcome. They'll never hear that. If either of you are I guess, Seth, if you are concerned, you're more than welcome to take your headset off and ignore me for a couple minutes.
Can I just announce what it is? Because I know what it is.
Yeah, you can go for it.
8-bit/16-bit.
That's true. Mm-hmm. I've been tricking you all along describing it as an 8-bit game. It's actually both. It is an NES and a Super Nintendo game at the same time. So this is a reveal that happens a couple hours into the game. Basically, when you initially deliver your quote-unquote message, is you are transported from the 8-bit NES Ninja Gaiden style to a 16-bit NES style, or Super Nintendo style. And that means that all of the visuals get a little bit more pixel dense and technically complex. Like they have retextured a lot of the areas that you just explored in higher detail in a way that sort of matches that graphical leap. The soundtrack changes. Both it adds sound channels and it has that it's like softer quality that Super Nintendo soundtracks have, and you can swap back and forth between them pretty regularly in the game at various points. And so the soundtrack will just flip between the 8-bit and the 16-bit version right there on the spot. And so every song in the game has an 8-bit and a 16-bit rendition to it. And some of them are so freaking good, man. Some of those Super Nintendo songs are so freaking good. And when it hits that point, they actually, use that as an opportunity to evolve the gameplay. So, Josh, your kind of leading question that I gave a little bit of a half answer to, it becomes much more of a gated exploration game at that point because you sort of get 16-bit mode, and now it is re-exploring. There's new areas, but it's also re-exploring the old areas with like the new context of 16-bit additions, new pathways open up, and it does become way more of a gated exploration game at that point. Like there is a full-on, squares and colored tiles map in this game, like in Super Metroid or Symphony of the Night or anything like that. So
That's cool.
That's why I say yes, 100% it counts for the gated exploration square, because it becomes that in the late game.
Is it completely necessary to revisit old areas in the 16-bit mode? Do you have to do it, or like do story relevant things open up in those areas that you have to go back? And then also on top of that, does it feel weird or does it feel bad to have to retrace your steps in those areas?
It doesn't feel bad or weird. It becomes 100% necessary, because you basically come to learn that, you've been playing through these relatively very linear feeling levels, and you come to learn that that's just like the middle 15% of these zones. And there's a whole bunch of zone on either side of that you couldn't access before that now you can.
Cool.
And it opens up into a much bigger sort of gated exploration style. And there's a bunch of abilities and things you need to, travel around and get sort of get the 6 MacGuffins from the different areas that you're going to need to beat the game, that type of thing. So yeah, it becomes much more open world exploration at that point. And all throughout the world, there are these gates that you will find that let you jump between 16 and 8-bit whenever you jump between them. And they start using those both just let you access both versions of the level, but they start to also use those in puzzles, because you have to traverse through them left to right or right to left to change it. And so sometimes they'll be placed in such a way where like there's no way to enter this corridor without walking through one and turning it to 8-bit, but I need it to be 16-bit to get where I'm trying to go. So like, how can I explore around in such a way where I can come back when I'm already in 8-bit to turn it into 16-bit when I go through that gate? So very
That's
fun.
awesome. Yeah.
Good variety. And yeah, that's the Messenger. Very cool. I will say, I do think that the 8-bit section is the strongest in the game. Like, it just puts such a strong foot forward that I feel like the gated exploration maybe ticks it back just a little bit. Sometimes it can be a little tricky to navigate. But on my replay that I did earlier this year, I had a lot better time with that section than I did the first time. And it wasn't because I remembered a lot. Like, it had been 5 years since I had played this game. So I think it was just, I was in maybe the better headspace for it, or a worse headspace back then. I'm not sure, but I found it sort of more roundly enjoyable this time around. So, last minute questions from the boys.
Yes, I think, and I'm glad I thought of this as you asked that. How does this compare, or how is your experience from this game having now played Sea of Stars? Is it a good companion piece to Sea of Stars? I know it's hard to say like, oh, this game is better than that game, because they're very, very different games, right? But yeah, that's my question. Like, how do they go together?
In terms of the actual games, they fit together quite nice. Sea of Stars, I think you could find people on the internet that would say like it's an actual prequel to The Messenger. I would say that it's more like they have fun, loose threads that connect them. There's some locations, and especially there's some like musical themes that are shared between them. There's definitely I will say replaying The Messenger after having played Sea of Stars was really fun, because things that were referenced in Sea of Stars that felt kind of minor when you played The Messenger the first time, I was like, oh, this is like directly in reference to Sea of Stars, or rather like this is you can see where the seeds of Sea of Stars came from in this game. I was like, okay, these are very much connected. And I think that they're both great games. I mean, different genres, but if you appreciated the level of sort of like polish and attention to detail and care that Sea of Stars takes with Chrono Trigger and turn-based RPGs, it is the exact same here that The Messenger takes with side-scrolling action games. So the studio they're 2 for 2 in terms of like absolutely nailing it on the head in terms of their vision. So
it absolutely makes you wonder, where are they going to go next with genre?
I know, it's like what could it be, right? I'm trying to Like, all right, what are all the classic? Is it like, are they going to make the world's sickest Punch-Out game? Like,
do like a Street Fighter 2 like or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Beat 'em up, man. I don't know. They could go in a lot of different directions. So
I know.
very excited.
Yeah, we will definitely be staying, very tuned into anything Sabotage Studios decides to do moving forward. So my final verdict on the game, I mean, it's pretty obvious, but for context here, when I'm doing my silly little trophy hunting, all right, I have a little bit of a personal tradition. I like to, every 50 platinums, I line up that with one of my favorite indies of all time. My 50th platinum was Outer Wilds, my favorite game ever. My 100th platinum was Tunic, which you guys have not heard me shut up about since it came out. And my 150th platinum was The Messenger. So I liked it enough to have chosen it to stand amongst those other two games. It is an easy main quest for me. Very high recommendation to anyone, and it's a banger. It's a banger. Go play
I am very excited to play that game. It's just sitting in my library. Honestly, I was contemplating playing this game for this episode, but knew because of previous conversations, not just like our Polygon, because Steve and I did chat a little bit of Polygon, which anybody that's listening that was there, good times, but but potentially Steve would bring this game. But I think that we even had conversations before that where you're like, Messenger, maybe you'll hear about it soon. So it's like, well, I'm not going to play the Messenger for this then. So, but yeah, very good review and very good game.
Highly recommend you check it out. It is thumbs up. And hey, Devolver, good pick. Good pick in publishing this one. I got to say, you knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, it's definitely one that same thing with, I've actually booted it up a couple times, like, oh yeah. And then, I you know how it is, you start a game, you're like, this game, it's awesome, but you're just not in the mood for it. That's this game a couple times for me, so I know that eventually it's just going to be one I just blast through and enjoy, so.
For me, when I know a game is really good, I feel like I have to be in like peak mood.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I need to be in the perfect mood for it because I don't want to do the game a disservice because I am not in the right headspace for it. Like it deserves my perfect headspace. So
yeah,
you're keenly aware that you only get one first playthrough of this game that everybody loves, and you want to make sure it's done exactly right. I'm right there with you for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to volunteer to go second because my game actually has some themes that will relate to Steve's a little bit here. So there's a game that came out. Let's see. I should have this like up in front of my face again. I have to look at the date. It came out in 2012. So it's definitely one that's missing. It's a classic. You guys have any guesses of an indie game that came out in 2012 that it could be before I just announce the name here?
You said it kind of relates to mine.
Mm-hmm.
Is it Mark of the Ninja?
Steve got it. It's Mark of the Ninja.
Nice.
So,
Mark of the Ninja.
Yeah, so I wanted to pick something that wasn't super obvious, but to me, this is like one of those indie classics. Like it's one that, well, we'll talk about the game obviously, but it's one that's like, if you go back and you talk like what's like a seminal, like, oh my God, this is a game back when indies were starting to pop off, that you need to play. Everybody would say Mark of the Ninja, you know what I mean? So this is very timely because there's no way that you would have played this. You obviously played this before this person tweeted this out, but I just saw on Twitter, someone put like a viral tweet that's like, what is an indie game that was like massive in its day and then just absolutely never gets talked about anymore. So like the opposite of like a Fez that still gets mentioned, that was like a big deal. And then these days, like the kids have forgotten it. And Mark of the Ninja came up in that thread multiple times. It's like, this game rules. Everyone loved it when it came out. I've literally never heard anyone talk about it in the last 5 years.
So it's funny you mentioned that, Steve, because this is a game on bangersonly.com version of IndieQuest that I have not. I've probably heard of it, but I'm looking at screenshots and I don't recollect any of this. So
okay,
I'm very
dude, good pick. This game was like, people were saying this game in the same breath as like Bez and Limbo at the time. Like, it was talked about it in those same tones.
So did you know in 2018 they released a remastered version of this game? Did you even know that? Yeah, like they're with all new art assets. Like, it's the same game, obviously, but it looks so much like they did the same thing that they did to Braid this year, which nobody even talked about either, where they took like the same art assets and like made them like 1080p and 4K and made them all pretty and stuff. Yeah, they did that in 2018. So that's the version I played. Let's talk a little bit about the game. Mark of the Ninja is a side-scrolling stealth platform game, and it's tangentially related to Steve's because it's a ninja game as well. That's where I went with that one. So you play as an unnamed ninja dude that gets a tattoo that gives him some kind of like mystical powers. And a lot of the levels are going through like different areas of like, I would say like Tokyo looking areas, some with a little bit more like cityscapes, some with more like dojo temples and things like that. You got to like sneak around these enemies, and it's all about how you basically get through the puzzle of the stealth element of the game, like a Metal Gear Solid or anything like that, but putting it on the 2D plane, which is really cool. Let's talk a little bit about the presentation of the game. It's a beautiful game. It's all hand-drawn. Like, the cutscenes are like, they look like a Saturday morning cartoon. Like, they look like, you know, a cartoon I'd watch in the 90s on Channel 7 or whatever, you know? Like, it looks exactly like that, and it's just really well done. It's clay animation. You know, it's clay, so they do that art style all the time. You know, if you played Don't Starve and things like that, you've seen their animation style before. So it's beautiful. It's just so much fun to look at, and it's just as fun to play. So any questions about the game so far?
No, I'm just on kind of a nostalgia trip, honestly, looking at screenshots of it. It's like, I've never even played this game. I just was like, it was in the air at the time when I was sort of like getting into more independent games. And so going back and looking at it is like, it's good to be home.
It is absolutely gorgeous, a very, very pretty game, like you said, Josh, but it also makes sense to me, and maybe this is just because I know this now, and so just like, if it came out last year, I probably wouldn't think this, but it feels very of the 2012 time. It like, it looks great, but also it makes sense that it was from 12 years ago. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay, so if you look at like the HUD elements and stuff, that's definitely one of the things that I'm like, okay, this was made in 2012, you know, probably. Like, it's, you can see there's some things like, yeah, but to me, the gameplay itself, this basic premise of it, you know, you're trying to get to the end of the stage. There are very linear levels that you have to get through. There are guards with vision cones. You know, just like Metal Gear Solid style. You got to like sneak behind them, and you can slash their throat, or you can choose to just choke them out and hide them, you know, and then they might wake up later on. You get different like darts that you can use to make sound effects or destroy lights. And if you're in the darkness, obviously they can't see you. And if you're in the light, you're going to be more prone to being seen. Then if you have to kind of like sneak. If you run, there's like a little bit of like a sound wave effect that goes around your character. And if they're in that little sound wave effect, they go, oh, what's that over there? And they'll see like a ghost of your character sitting where they think you are, and they'll start going towards that area. So the idea is like, okay, I can maybe like run here, and then they're like seeing that, think I'm over here, and then like jump up into an event, wait for them to come, and then dive down on them and kill them. You know, and the whole idea of the game is to level up the guy. He gets these tattoos on him a couple of times in the game that makes him a little more powerful, that gives him a little bit more like tools in his kit. And then you can get like little coin, like I forget what the currency is called, but you get a currency that you can unlock more things and more move sets. So say like at the very beginning, the basic thing you can do is probably like jump behind somebody, you know, and then maybe like crawl on the ceiling. But after a while, you can go up into a vent and like rappel down, you know, on a rope, and then get behind somebody. Or you can like bust open a door and then kill somebody, you know, as you unlock more movesets. And then I know that the storyline and things change if you decide to kill, or if you decide to be silent but not deadly. You know, you're trying to get through everything without killing people. So the story is actually pretty fascinating. It's kind of like it's a modern day setting, and it's like out with the old, in with the new, and it's kind of trying to I don't know if it's trying to have some commentary on that or not, but it's more of like a ninja that's set in his ways, trying to battle against all this new tech that's coming out. So there's a lot of like trip mines and like security cameras you have to deactivate, and it's all just really fun and interesting, like level design puzzles that you have to get through to, get to the other side. There are occasionally some boss battles that will put you to the test of, your reflexes or your sneaking skills, but definitely is one of the best stealth games I've played. I just was in the mood for stealth games. Like they just don't make them that much anymore. At least I, as far as I know, I haven't seen very many stealth games anymore. Like just once in a while there'll be one that'll pop up, but like I feel like this is a genre that's just kind of almost like dormant right now. So it was kind of just refreshing to play something like that.
I think stealth, it depends on the game. Like I enjoy stealth in certain games and hate stealth in others. And I think maybe that's part of the problem, is it's extremely polarizing. I don't really love when a game throws a stealth mission in for the heck of it, just because. But if the game is focused around stealth, then I enjoy it, because I feel like there's a lot more thought that goes into it. I feel like stealth in general lends itself to being kind of glitchy and weird in games that aren't designed for it, because like, why did I just get seen? It makes no sense. Like I was never seen in that position before, but in a 2D game like this, it makes a heck of a lot more sense than a lot of 3D games I've played, I guess.
Yeah, I think these days, I think stealth is way more common in AAA, and like you were saying, Josh, I think stealth went from being the focus of a game to stealth is how you start encounters in games now until you get seen, and then it turns into the shooter, right? Like the Uncharted's and the Last of Us and stuff like that. Like there is always a stealth component, but it's almost like basically they're like, see how long you can keep the plate spinning, but we don't ever expect you to keep it spinning the whole time. At some point it's going to fall apart and it's going to be a shooter. And so it's only like a genre mashup these days. Yeah, like like we have Hitman and things like that, of course. That's true. Yeah. So, but anyway, for this game, like so the checkpointing, I think, is the thing that I noticed that is really, really nice in this game, because so say you go into a building at the top floor, right? And there's like 5 rooms you got to get through, and you can kind of see the path you need to take. You mess up the stealth element, and the guy's kind of like dies within a couple hits. Like you're very easy to die, like get killed and shot and things. But it'll checkpoint you right there at the beginning of the room every single time. So it's not like you're like having to do the entire stealth segment all over again. It'll be like, okay, I did 2 rooms here. Okay, I died here at the beginning of the 3rd room. I'm going to start at the 3rd room again. We could try that again. And it's kind of just like rinse, repeat, trying the stealth things. So I think that makes it a little bit easier to like digest, in this type of game. So if there is an area where you're just like, oh man, I'm just dying a lot here, you can maybe try something different. Like, okay, so the way you use the equipment is you kind of slow down time by hitting the trigger, and you can have like a cursor that kind of moves back and forth. So say I have, they have like a landmine that you can throw down that like explodes and kills a dude. You can kind of like slow down time, throw a landmine behind one of the guys, and then that'll alert everybody to that area, and everyone's freaking out. As they're doing that, you can like jump up into the top rafters and in the shadows, like crawl above their heads, and get to the next room. So it's all is just like, I like this type of game because you think outside the box. You have this tool set, and how can I use these 7 pieces together to get to the other side? And that's this whole game, and it plays really smooth. I'm not going to say it's going to play like The Messenger, where you're like bouncing off everything and it's like super, super fast or anything. But the idea of it being stealthy, and you kind of like meticulously take your time through every single stage. It just really, really feels good. I think the music in here is nothing to like write home about. I'll be honest with that. I think it's just kind of like your standard. If you think of a ninja game, this is like the standard OST that would play. I don't think I would listen to it like in the background or anything like that. It's pretty average, but
but everything else from the presentation standpoint and the gameplay standpoint, it's really stellar. I think it looks great, it plays great, and it has so many unlockables. And by the end of the game, you don't even unlock everything. They actually encourage you to play on New Game Plus to keep unlocking new movesets and new skills and new items. So, and the story's cool. Like, I actually was very compelled. Basically, these tattoos, I won't spoil much of the story, but the basic premise is the tattoos that give you these powers where you can kind of like see like the sight lines. They're trying to make it like in-universe reason why you can see like the vision cones, I guess. But anyway, the tattoos make you go crazy. So there's like a whole like insanity element to the game where like, is any of this story real? Is this happening? You know, and then you have some choices that you get to make later on in the story that will reflect that. I'll just say that much. But it does make the story compelling to actually see through too.
Does the growing insanity impact gameplay at all?
There is a couple of moves that are like powered up versions. I'll spoil one. It's not too crazy, but later on in the game, you can use that little cursor to basically instant teleport to different areas.
Oh, okay.
So say like there's a dude way up on the top ledge, you can kind of like instantly teleport behind him, cut his neck, and then like instantly teleport to somebody else, cut their neck, you know, and so you're kind of like basically teleporting around the map. So it kind of takes that early, like I'm kind of being super careful to where I can kind of like just get through this stage really fast. Yeah, yep. Exactly. It's really cool. So I think the ramp up of the skills and everything is the main draw for this game. It's just like, as you get another tool, you're like, oh, I got to try this out, you know, and it's just like really fun to tinker with everything. And I like that in a game. So to me, this is just like catnip, you know, it's like, okay, I got to keep on going and keep on trying this. So definitely a lot of fun in that respect.
Do you think there are enough skills where you play this game a certain way and then the next person might play it a completely different way?
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, because like there's skills like, okay, like I said, like you can like bust through doors and kill dudes, and there are ways to play through the game without killing people, which is I know a lot of people request that in stealth games. Like Dishonored has a whole system based on that, right, where you don't kill people. Same thing in here. You can like incapacitate people with like flashbangs and like, you know, just like I said, choke them out, or just like completely like just sneak around them without even touching them too. So you can play completely like that, or you can go in guns blazing, just killing people and just becoming like the ultimate stealth assassin type of vibes, you know? So like just, I like that feeling because you're a ninja, right? You don't want to be a ninja that sneaks up and jumps out behind from behind something and just kills people. There's also an interesting mechanic that they have where you can like hide behind things. So say like there's a guard path that's going back and forth in front of a statue. You can like sneak up to that statue, hold down B, and then like hide behind the statue, right? And then he walks by again. You can hit B again, jump out and get him, or just walk by. You know, whatever you want to do, depending on how you want how you like to play.
That's cool.
So definitely, to me, going back to this is the first time I've actually like sat down and played through the entire game. It took me about 7 hours or so. It's not super long, but like I said, it does encourage replay. If you like the gameplay loop, it encourages you to play it again, unlock more things. I don't think the story changes any if you play it again, but it definitely changes mechanically because you just get more tools to do more cool things. Similar to like Hitman, where, you know, you get like, oh, I did one run of this map with like 2 of the weapons. Now I have 22, you know what I mean, that I'm going to be working with, type of vibe. So yeah, it's a really interesting game. I'm very glad I went back and played it. Any questions before I put on the quest log? I think that's about all I have to say about this one.
No, this is a cool pick.
All right, awesome. So I was kind of going back and forth on this one between side quest and main quest for one reason, because it's a genre game. Like, a lot of people, if they don't like stealth, are they going to have fun with this? That's the question I ask, because like we've had games like Gungeon, you know, it's a good example. It's like, it's a roguelike, and it's a very challenging roguelike. Is everybody going to have fun if they jump into that game? Probably not, if they're not into that style, or if they can't, you know, get good or whatever. To me, I think that Mark of the Ninja is a main quest, because, you know, this one could have easily been a side quest because people talk about it all the time, like back in the day, like I said, like in 2012, 2013 era, like this is one that like was sung praises for so many years. I wouldn't say it's like it does age a little bit. You can see the age, like Seth was saying, like it's kind of like you can tell it's from 2012. But if you put your mindset there and you're like, okay, this game's a little older, but they've refreshed it. I still think it holds up for the most part. There's a couple of things here and there where I'm like, they could probably like have tightened it up a little bit on this certain stage, but any game has little complaints like that. I do think that if anybody's looking for a stealth game though in 2024, to go play that remastered version and you're going to have an awesome time. So that's why I want to put it on Main Quest. Yeah, I think that it's just a really solid experience and I just had a blast. It was so fun. Like it took me back to the time where there was a stealth game out all the time, and Metal Gear Solid's one of my favorite series. So I'm going to love a really interesting stealth game, and I think this one pulls it off.
Yeah, nice. I'm happy you brought it because I honestly did not expect to hear about a brand new to me game on this episode, but it happened.
Yeah, that was kind of my goal. I think that's what I.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. There's definitely. I think there's going to be a lot of people like you, Drachma, that are going to be like weird. Okay, but like. For like 10%, like a certain number of old heads in our audience, they're going to be driving their car being like, yes.
Yeah.
No, I mean, there's like, I looked at the Steam page and there's like 12,000 reviews for this game. Like it clearly was very popular because I would say anything over 10,000 is a very popular game on Steam. So clearly this was a very popular game at some point in time. It had never come across my eyes, I guess.
Yeah. And my thought was like, okay, this is game to me. When I look at the quest log, it's like, what's missing? It's like, this is a classic indie. This needs to be on the quest log because we need to vlog this one because this is one that people held up to such high regards before. And does it live up to that, which is always nice, like you did with World of Goo or something like that. So,
right.
Yes. So it's very similar to that idea. And me playing it for the first time with fresh eyes in the year of our Lord 2024, and I still loved it and recommend it to everybody. I think that says a lot.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Okay. Well, we've had 2 ninja games. And I guess that leaves me. And I brought Cyber Shadow. What's that? What's that? Is it Cyber Shadow? Is that
Cyber Shadow? Yeah.
That's like a very difficult game, I've heard, right? Like it's super hard. But I didn't actually bring Cyber Shadow. So I brought a game that I'm kind of contradicting what Steve's initial message was, where he said, I was trying to bring a game that I didn't think we would do as a group episode. We absolutely could have done a group episode for this game, which, I feel a little bit bad about. But at the same time, Steve made me feel bad again because when he found out what it was, he said, "Oh yeah, no, that's indie. No one's gonna get mad at you for that." I'm like, "What? I really thought this was indie. It's not indie." And he's like, "Oh, I mean, well, the publisher and blah 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 blah." And this game that I'm bringing kind of has the Minecraft problem.
Can I guess?
A little bit. Yes, go ahead.
Is it Ori and the Blind Forest?
It is not Ori and the Blind Forest.
More merchandised than that.
Oh,
it is.
Is it?
I will say that it has a show.
Oh, Cuphead.
I
thought about this one. I'm not gonna lie, I really did. I thought about let's bust out Cuphead. Okay, this is a really fun one to talk about.
Yeah.
So up until this last 2 weeks, I had never played Cuphead in my life. And, if anybody's been listening to this show for any amount of time, they probably are thinking, really, Drachma has not played Cuphead. So much so that a good buddy of ours, Travis Terry of the Polykill podcast, said, you've never played Cuphead at Polycon? And he's like, you would really like that game. I'm like, yes, I really do like that game. It is very, very good. And here we are. We're going to explain why I like Cuphead and why it's on the quest log. Something kind of weird about Cuphead, we've talked about Hollow Knight almost basically every other episode for the 92 episodes that have been running on this show. Cuphead, I don't know that we've mentioned a whole lot, which is strange. Maybe it just doesn't have a parallel to anything that we've played, or maybe we don't play a lot of run and guns, so that's kind of interesting, or maybe it's just not top of mind. But Cuphead is probably, man, I don't know, maybe top 10 most popular indie games of all time. Cuphead has got to be about on that list. It has its own Netflix show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's in the air at all times, I feel like. People are always thinking about Cuphead a little bit in the back of their mind. It's their wedding day, and in the back of their mind, they're thinking about Mugman. All right.
Yes, they absolutely are.
It's the only Funko Pops that I own is Cuphead and Mugman. Just a fun fact about me.
Yeah. Nice. All right, so Cuphead released September 29th, 2017, so just about 7 years ago. Developed by Studio MDHR and was also published by them. Platform is anything you can get your hands on, pretty much. Cuphead is on all of the platforms at this point. I don't think it's on mobile, and I don't know that I would ever want to play it on mobile, but it is on all the consoles and PC. What is Cuphead? It is a challenging, boss-based run-and-gun with old-school cartoon aesthetics. Mm-hmm. So, most of the time when you think run-and-gun, you think, I'm going to run through a level, shooting enemies. Generally, you can shoot as you run, and that's why it's called run and gun. Cuphead is more focused on the boss aspect. I will say there are actual true run and gun levels in this game, but I think that I talked to Steve a little bit about this, and I would imagine the majority of people out there massively prefer the boss battles over the actual run and gun levels of Cuphead.
For sure.
Yeah. To me, they almost could have dialed them back a little bit. I know they're kind of cool coin chasers, which makes sense for like the shop and stuff like that, and stuff we'll get to in the gameplay, but I don't know. The bosses is where it's at. This game is kind of a glorified boss rush. Realistically, you don't even have to do the run and gun stages if you don't want to, and you just want to use the original weapon. Like, you don't have to do any of that stuff. And just there is an overworld map that you walk around a la, I don't know, Super Mario Brothers 3 or something like that, except for you can actually walk, like a DKC 3 maybe. And you can walk to each boss and to the shop and to the different run and gun levels. But really, you're just walking to the bosses. That's where you're waiting for, and it's kind of a cool experience because you can see, there's kind of a cool animated thing that is outset from the rest of the overworld when you go to a boss. Kind of like in Scooby-Doo. And I don't know if Scooby-Doo's not even old enough to compare to Cuphead, really, but in Scooby-Doo, when you're watching that cartoon, you can always tell the thing that is about to be interacted with because it is a different shade of brown than the rest of the brown that blends into the rest of the wall, that type of thing. Yeah. Cuphead does that for you. You can always tell, I can walk over there and interact with that thing because it is a little bit more brightly lit, and that is probably a boss or something, right? So speaking of what this game looks like, I already mentioned it's, that old school cartoon. It reminds me of the 30s and 40s cartoon art style. It is an absolutely gorgeous, beautiful, stunning game. I think that anybody that has played or not played Cuphead, if they know anything about Cuphead, they're going to be like, oh, that game looks awesome. That is one of the coolest looking games I've ever seen and or played, and that is very true.
Yeah. That is I think what made Cuphead initially popular is how good it looks. I remember the whole thing about Cuphead is that it would show up in sizzle reels during E3 presentations, and it wouldn't get front and center stage, but it jumps out so much and it looks so unique that everyone online would be like, what the hell was that one game that was shown for this 1 second at this point during that that hypercut of indie games, and from there it just sort of took off.
Yeah. The thing that was cool about this game, you'll get to the gameplay obviously, but the game looks so good that there's no way this gameplay is good. That's what everybody would say. Everybody would be like, how does this game look this good? There's no way it's going to be good. At least it'll be fun to look at, you know what I mean? But of course, we know the gameplay is awesome, so go ahead.
Yeah.
It is very much that, what is it? Dragon's Lair? Is Dragon's Lair that arcade game that looks like a cartoon? Mm-hmm. That game plays absolutely like dog shit.
Yeah.
It's so rough. It's more of a point and click adventure type thing, but it's so bad. So that's where you look at this aesthetic and you think that's how it's going to play. But oh my gosh, Josh, you are not kidding. It pulls off the gameplay in so many ways. We will get to it shortly. But yeah, it really reminds me of everybody's got something from that. Maybe not everybody, maybe not the youngest generation, but I think most of people our age have something from a cartoon from that era that they can relate this to. For me, it was the very early Tom and Jerry cartoons.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, nice.
Like the earliest Tom and Jerry cartoons where Tom's got the huge eyes and Jerry, they back then they did so much with the animation that they don't do now, or a lot of it's just computer generated now. And they really pull that off in Cuphead. The expressions that the characters give, the bosses give, are so good and so reminiscent of those old cartoons. Music, incredible. Honestly, again, one of the best indie soundtracks probably ever. It's kind of a mixture of jazz, big band, ragtime. It's just an absolutely incredible OST. If you're out there and you have not listened to any tunes from Cuphead, do yourself a favor and go to YouTube and listen to some Cuphead, because so good. So many instruments, just bombastic themes that change as the game goes depending on the boss you're fighting. It's just an incredible OST from start to finish. Honestly, most bosses take roughly 2 minutes, and you don't wish for your fingers, for the arthritis that you can feel creeping into your hands. You don't wish that they would be longer, but you do want to hear more and see more of this game without punishing yourself, right?
Yeah, it's a fun soundtrack too, because those are genres that aren't really usually represented
right
in indie game music. Like, no shade on it, but a lot of the games that we hype up, even when I was talking about The Messenger, I feel like a lot of good indie soundtracks fall into either like really good chiptune or really good like slow ambient kind of synthy music, and those are like the biggest two genres. Maybe some like guitar or folksy type stuff for more modern games, but yeah, this is something wholly unique for this space.
Yeah, I mean, even reaching into AAA,
Yeah.
I guess you could kind of hear some of this in something like BioShock Infinite or something like that, or maybe even like Fallout a little bit. Kind of starts to, of the time games, right, where the Great Depression, right, and it was that kind of music. So there are certainly AAA games, but not very many of them, and like Cuphead does it in such a way, in a genre that probably has never been done. Like, honestly, the run and gun genre with this big band music in the background. The story. So you're playing as Cuphead and his pal Mugman, and you are having a night out in the town, gambling, throwing some dice, making some moolah, and all of a sudden this guy comes over named King Dice, and he is the owner of the casino, and he tells you, hey, young fellas or whatever, you're doing really well. How about we make a deal? And then the devil also is there. I don't remember exactly how that works, but they're both standing there. And the devil says, if you win here, I will give you something, some bit large sum of money, I think, if I recall. Or if you lose, then you're going to owe me, type of thing. So they roll Snake Eyes, and now Cuphead and Mugman owe the devil, and basically you have to go on this journey to fight all these bosses, because all these bosses are debtors, and you're supposed to go collect from them to give to the devil.
That's why you never bet a fiddle of gold against your soul, buddy.
That's right. Unless your name is Johnny, because you play a heck of a fiddle. Or Cuphead or Mugman. I will say, I mean, obviously they're heroes, and I'm not spoiling much that if you're pretty good at this game, eventually you're going to go against the devil. Like it's gonna happen, right?
Can you imagine if the twist was Mugman dies at the end?
Yeah. Cuphead 2 is just trying to avenge Mugman.
Trying to put the pieces of his head back together. He's like, no.
Yes. That takes us to gameplay, which, so many of these types of games lean heavily on the gameplay. And I will say that the gameplay of Cuphead is also incredible. That's a rare game, not even just a rare indie, but a rare game in general that can mash all of these pieces of gameplay and music and presentation and even a cool, fun, lighthearted story together and have this. Everything works perfectly right. There's not something in this game that is kind of oh, that's a little bit worse than the other things. Like everything is really good. So we're to gameplay, which is usually where I sing the praises of a game that plays well, but everything before it is also good. But like I said, it's a run and gun. There is some platforming sections when you're fighting against bosses as well, where there will be platforms that come out where you have to constantly kind of balance back and forth and jump up and down on these platforms to manage to continue to keep shooting the boss in like their weak spot, which most of the time, most bosses, you can shoot them anywhere and they're going to get hit. But there are certain bosses where you have to shoot in a certain place. So you kind of have to make sure you're standing on top of a platform to keep hitting that, or have a weapon that can reach that somehow. I would call it almost a bullet hell light at certain sections. It's certainly not a bullet hell. Like traditional bullet hell, or what I would consider bullet hell at this point, is my entire screen is filled with bullets, and I have 2 or 3 places in the entire thing that I can be in right now and not die. Mm-hmm. Cuphead is not that. There's a lot more places you can venture into and not die, but there are certain sections where you're managing multiple different projectiles, which can get kind of hard. And maybe is one of the only detractions that I could possibly say about Cuphead is that it's so gorgeous that certain times I can't tell what is exactly a cartoon and what isn't until you fight the boss a couple times and you're like, okay, I know that thing can hit me, right? Yeah. There are even certain times where bosses don't have a hitbox. You can like be in them, in their face. Yeah. And that's kind of the point, right? They're in like, it almost looks like they're in the background. You can shoot them, but you can also like be up in their business and like hover within them and shoot them at the same time. That's what gets you maximum damage, where, you know, most of the time you're like, oh, boss, don't hit boss because boss does contact damage and I will take an HP of damage, right? So all kinds of weapons. Well, I say all kinds. There are 6 weapons, but to me it feels like all kinds because you used many of them and then also kind of gravitated towards certain ones that I really like a lot, which I think is what people probably do, right? But I also found that as you go through this game, I'll spoil it, there is a homing weapon in this game, right? Mm-hmm. So the homing weapon is nice because you can basically constantly hit the boss or enemies that are coming around and also the boss. The detraction for that is that it doesn't do as much damage as the majority of other weapons. Which, to me, at first, I'm like, well, maybe I'd never want to really use that because I should be able to do more damage with the spread or with the lobber or something like that, or one of the other weapons. But the nice thing about the homing weapon is that it will basically constantly hit the boss. There's not very many weapons that can actually always be hitting the boss, which is nice. So, you know, every weapon in the game has a plus and a minus and has certain situations that you want to use it. There is a spread shotgun type weapon that is very fast. Well, it's not really like a shotgun, but it is, it's spreading out all the time, but it doesn't go very far. Mm-hmm. So, you can do a lot of damage if you're right next to the boss, but a lot of times you don't want to be right next to the boss because that's where things that will hurt you are coming out, right? So you can always switch between 2 weapons as you play, which is very nice, and you can kind of do that. Hey, I need to be a little bit further back from the boss right now. I have a longer range weapon, and then I can go closer to the boss later when I know that it's safe and I can use my higher damage shorter range weapon, which is cool. You unlock weapons from a shop. You get coins from those run and gun levels that I mentioned. So you wind up taking those coins to a shop. You can unlock weapons. You can unlock passives that are kind of like my favorite one and the one that I use basically all the time. You have a dash in this game, and when you dash, you just dash straight a couple lengths of Cuphead. You can go straight, and that will help you dodge different projectiles and things like that, and can help you get to other platforms. But my favorite passive of the game is that you get like a iframe dash, where Cuphead goes into a cloud of smoke and then appears on the other end in a cloud of smoke, and that's it, right? So throughout that entire dash, Cuphead or Mugman, whoever you're playing as, could not be hit. And I love to play my games where I have some iframes, a la Dark Souls, a la Gungeon. Like, give me some iframes where I can actually roll through or move through a projectile and not get hit. Mm-hmm. So there are a whole bunch of other ones. I think a lot of people probably gravitate towards the HP passives, where you just get extra HP. Mm-hmm. And then later on, you can actually have 2 extra HP. The thing that I don't like about those is you also do less damage. Yeah. But for a player who is not as good at these games, it's probably nice because, hey, now I just have 2 extra HP. I don't have to be quite as good, and I should still be able to get through the boss. I don't need to get an A rank on every single boss. I just want to beat the game. So I totally understand why you just want to take HP sometimes. I think that is everything until I get to co-op. So this game is one of those special games. Run and guns often have this. But, this game has got like everything going for it. And then it's also like, oh, do you want to play with your buddy? Well, yes, I do.
Yep.
I got to experience co-op a little bit. I mentioned that I talked to Steve a little bit about this at Polycon last 2 weekends ago. So I was like, yeah, I'm playing Cuphead. And we went through a whole kind of almost 20 questions thing where everybody was guessing what the game was. And eventually we landed on Cuphead. So Steve and I sat down for, I don't know, Steve, an hour and a half playing Cuphead probably.
Yeah, give or take. We probably went through, 10, a little more than 10 bosses or something like that?
We definitely made it well into aisle 2. And there are technically 3 aisles and then the big boss aisle at the end, right? Hell or whatever. So yeah, we made it pretty far. To me, I enjoy this game a lot in co-op, but it seems like not a very different game, but it seems you play it pretty differently in co-op than you do single player. Yeah. And most of that is because if you die in single player, you're dead. It's time to restart your run. If you die in co-op, you have an opportunity to parry your cooperative partner, which honestly brings me back to I need to talk about parries. I cannot believe I forgot about parries this entire time.
I was going to ask that question. I was like, when there's a gap, I was going to ask about parries.
Yes, perfect. So you can parry your partner to bring them back to life. Now we're going to kind of pivot quickly into parries. So there are pink projectiles that come out of bosses. Usually it's just another projectile that's like, oh, I'm shooting 5 projectiles right now. 4 of them are black and 1 of them is pink. That projectile you can jump as Cuphead or Mugman and then press the jump button again. You kind of do like a midair flip a la Samus's screw attack or something like that. It doesn't last very long. As long as you hit it right, you will get the parry, and that builds up your super meter. And then your super meter is like cards at the bottom left-hand corner. And eventually you get 5, and then you can do big super attacks that you gain as you go through this game. Sometimes, or it's also can be invincibility, but I stuck with this big beam that comes out of either Cuphead or Mugman, does a bunch of damage, as long as you're in the right place, right? So those are parries. That's why you want to use parries. It is a very fun mechanic. Honestly, I'm not a person that particularly loves parrying in a lot of games because I think you have to be almost too precise. Cuphead does not feel that way, and once you understand the parry mechanic, it's like kind of awesome.
Yeah.
Maybe one of the best parry mechanics in any game I've ever played. It is so good, and it feels so good, and you feel like a good gamer when you master the parry.
Yeah, and importantly, the difference I think from Dark Souls is that it's never really or rarely necessary to parry. It's like it's an added benefit for putting yourself in a little bit more harm's way.
Yes.
You can just dodge it otherwise.
Right. Yes. I mean, once you learn the best way to parry each attack when there are parryable objects, you just use that to your advantage to build your special. And then you can just do more damage. Basically, if you're a good parrier, you can do more damage to the boss and get better ranks for like the scorecards at the end. And speaking of those scorecards, they are based on how much HP you have at the end, how quickly you killed the boss. There's like a weird how good of a gamer were you, where you get like 2 stars. I don't get what makes you have either 2 stars or 1 star. It's like a skill based one. Yeah. I very rarely got 1 star. I almost always had 2, even if I didn't feel like I performed that well. So I don't really understand how that works. The big one there is you have to get 3 parries or 5 parries. I think it's 3 parries to get a perfect score for every single boss. So like Steve said, you don't have to parry, and you really don't have to. I mean, if you don't care about that, don't parry. But once you learn how, then you're like, well, how many parries do I have? Do I have 2? I need to get 1 more. I need to get a 3rd parry so I can at least have a chance at getting like an A scorecard or something like that, which mostly only impacts achievements and things, but it really feels good when that pops up, honestly. Yeah. So I think the last thing I want to mention, and something that I could have mentioned at any point throughout this entire conversation, but it's good to hold it for the end because I think it will create a good conversation between us co-hosts, is the difficulty. This game is known for being hard. And I would say that it roughly lived up to those expectations. I enjoy these kinds of games, but honestly, going into this game, I had thought, I know this game's going to be hard. So that how long to beat tells me that I should be able to beat on 10 hours. But what if I don't finish it in 20? Like, I was really gauging, do I have enough time to beat Cuphead just in case I'm actually just bad at this game? Especially when you look at, like, when I was struggling with bosses, or when I just beat a boss that I was struggling with for a while, I like to go get that extra dopamine hit and go to Reddit and have other people tell me that they were bad, because that will make me feel better.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of funny people on Reddit that were like, day 267, 14 hours, 37 minutes, 14 seconds, and I'm still stuck on such and such boss, right? Like, that being dumb, but at the same time, like, there are a lot of bosses in this game that give people a lot of trouble. And I think that's definitely a big, for me, piece of that seesaw between side quests and main quests. Like, if a game is too hard that most people won't be able to get very far in it, I have a hard time personally giving it a main quest recommendation. But the nice thing about Cuphead is there is a simple version of every single boss. I can't tell you how those simple versions go because I'm not a wuss. But if you are, then be my guest and try the simple. I imagine it just dumbs it down a little bit, probably less projectiles, less speed, I would think. But I went normal for every boss. But the nice thing is that you know that there is something there for people who aren't into the run and gun genre, I suppose. How were your guys' thoughts on difficulty when you played?
I mean, I eat this stuff up, right? I was all about it when it came out. My favorite games are like Super Meat Boy. So this is very much in line with that. And I also love a boss rush game. Yes. You know, when I played through Titan Souls and wouldn't stop talking about that, like, I'm always craving a boss rush. So I do remember there being like a little bit of pushback at the time that the game came out, because there was this period of time kind of right after what I mentioned before where people were like, what is that game? Where people learned about it, but didn't know exactly what it was going to be. Like, they hadn't shown like full gameplay, so people didn't know what to expect. And you kind of assume with like such a cartoony aesthetic, you know, it's conjuring images of like Steamboat Willie and like Mickey Mouse and stuff like that. So you just sort of assume it's going to be a relatively simple but stylish platformer. And so I think a lot of people had a little bit of whiplash when they finally got around to playing it. But I was 100% on board. And I think that it is, for someone that like seeks out difficulty, for the people that like, you know, shoot 'em ups, you know, splatformers, and any of those types of games, you'll feel right at home here. It is very doable if you just learn the patterns.
Yeah. And to me, like, I'm finding out more and more that I love this style of game, because like I used to be like, nah, I don't like hard games. I don't want the challenge, but no, I do. But for the length of the boss fights, I feel like they're perfectly packaged. Like there's a couple that are a little longer, that are like 3 to 4 minutes, but most of them are within 2 minutes long, like literally. Like, so you just got to learn 2 minutes of patterns and then just execute, you know? And I think that's, if you put the time in and you actually, like, even if you're not super skilled, you can get through all the bosses. Like, honestly, I think this is a hard game that most people can do from my perspective. Yeah. But if that's still too hard for you, there's the simplified mode, like you were saying. So I think that it rides the line there. Honestly, I had more trouble with the actual like 2D side-scrolling levels than the bosses in this game.
Me too.
Yeah, I felt like they were like unfairly hard, like even more than the bosses. You know what I mean?
To me, the side-scrolling run and gun levels, they feel structured similarly to the bosses in that you need to learn patterns. But like, I don't want to learn patterns when I'm going from left to right through a stage. Like, I don't want to die here and then learn, okay, I need to do this thing instead the next time. I kind of like that on bosses. I don't know why that is, but I hate when there's like a surprise, or like it feels like something comes up in a more regular platformer that gets me that I didn't really know was going to happen, and it feels a little bit cheap. Or I don't know how to overcome this obstacle of this enemy, and I just have to keep going back there over a minute and try to figure it out every time.
Yeah.
Like with the bosses, each stage, and I should have mentioned that too, each boss has multiple phases and almost like multiple bosses in each boss, right? They transform and do different things. But each time you get to that next phase, it feels good. Like I got here, I kind of conquered and learned that first phase. Now I can go to the next one. The run and gun levels never really felt that way to me. They didn't make me feel good about finishing. I was just like, okay, I got my 5 coins. Time to go play a boss. Like that's what. Yeah.
Honestly, for the game, it's like for a game that's so polished and does everything so well, I would say that's the biggest detractor for me personally for the game. But
I agree.
I think that if I was going to bring the game, it would be a main quest because like I think that it is doable for everybody, and I think it's worth experiencing because of how great everything is around the difficulty, and like having the accessibility options does help quite a bit with that. So
Right.
Yeah.
I agree. Only one other thing I will mention that I think is just an awesome added thing that doesn't need to be there. So a lot of people argue that it kind of sucks. It's not very much fun when you don't know how much health the boss has. It can be kind of, I don't care personally, but like the Dark Souls players out there, like I want to know just where I'm at and how far I was. Cuphead does not give you a boss health, but lets you know by like this check mark thing that Cuphead walks on after you die how far along in the boss you were, which I think is just one of the coolest added things that they could have done for this game.
Yeah, it really gives you that one more try.
Yes.
Like you see that on like the game over screen, on the failure screen, and you're like, oh my God, I was so close. And you almost think that they must be a little bit like even fudging it, because like so often you are like what looks like 2% away from having killed that boss, and you're like, I have to get back in there and do it right now.
Yep, absolutely. And then you're like, I got it this time. And then you die 5 more times to the first phase, and you're like, oh, what have I done? Am I just like so stupid? I can't figure this out. Yeah. But yes, for sure. Okay. Well, with that, I am going to toss Cuphead, obviously, on the main quest.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Gotta be.
I mean, upper echelon, top tier main quest, even to the point where up to this point, we do something at the end of the year where we rank our indie games of 2024. But we also have a category where we rank a game that we played in 2024 that was from a previous year, right? So up to this point, Inscription was basically just absolutely knocking every piece of competition out for me. Like Inscription, so good. And then Cuphead's here. And now Cuphead and Inscription are duking it out. I'm excited to get to that show so that I can be like, who deserves to win that? Because in the past, it's always been like, oh, obviously it's this game. But man, Cuphead and Inscription, for different reasons, obviously, are both excellent indie games. And Inscription could have easily come to an episode like this, right? Where it's a banger from a previous year. But yes, Cuphead, too good. The only thing I will say is I think it took me, because of the playtime between Steve and I don't know exactly how long it took me to beat this game. I think 8.5 to 9 hours. How long to beat says 10. So it really depends on how good you are at these games. Like this is one of those games, like the old NES games that say 45 minutes, where, it's 45 minutes of perfect run. Like you still are going to take 4 hours to get to that point. There are probably people out there that can beat it in 10 hours or less, or I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that have, grinded against this game for a year or more and just can't get past certain parts. So it really depends on your skill level, but there is simple. I will say until a certain point, you can't no longer use simple at a certain point. So if that turns you off, knowing that at the end of the game, you have to play on regular mode, then just know that will be coming. But yeah, Cuphead, awesome game.
Banger.
Did you play the DLC? That was my other question.
I am going to.
Okay.
I have not played it yet.
I haven't played it either. It's kind of like just you talking about it. It's like, maybe I should just start it over and go through it all again and do the DLC. Maybe, there's a million games, but that's just... on the back of my mind. And also, I want to shout out real quick is I have the Cuphead board game. It's pretty fun.
Ooh.
It's actually pretty fun. It's pretty interesting. So it has basically all the bosses from the game, and you do a co-op like run through with like dice and everything to beat all the bosses. And it's very challenging too, just like the game. So
really,
yeah, it's
awesome.
fun. It's a lot of fun. So if you want a co-op board game, that's actually a solid pick too.
I feel like in terms of like within that, you can go buy something at Meijer is local to me, a Walmart, and you go walk in there. There's not a whole lot of good cooperative board games that you can just go buy, right? So I've played a couple, but that's cool that it's cooperative. You're not competing, right?
Yeah,
so that's fun.
Yeah, it's cooperative, and it's like it's themed. You know, all the Cuphead stuff. It feels very old school, like all the packaging and stuff. I wouldn't say like I haven't played past a couple of the bosses in the game, so I don't know if it gets like impossibly hard or anything, but we had a good time for the few hours that we spent with it. So yeah, definitely if you're looking for something like that, it's cool.
Nice. Yeah, and I need to check out the DLC, and I also have already been considering like, well, when I get a little bit of time here and there, I'm so much better at this game now. I'm going to go get A's on an aisle 1 and aisle 2 and things like that, right? So yes, very excited to continue my Cuphead journey in the future.
Okay, so well, now we can go instead of, why isn't that on the quest log? We can go, wow, it finally is. So we got 3 main quest games. We got The Messenger, Mark of the Ninja, and Cuphead. I think if you guys haven't played any of these games, try them out. I think they're classics. They're just like the missing omissions. I think we'll come back and do this type of episode again sometime.
Yeah, this is a very fun one. Fun idea. Good to like sit down and think of what I wanted to bring. And I'm not surprised that we have 3 main quests here. I think it's almost by definition the type of game that makes it to an episode like this is sort of destined in most cases to be a main quest. So
yes, no doubt.
Okay, so I guess we're getting to the end of the show. That means we're going to plug ourselves. You can find the show, IndieQuestPod, on Twitter. You can send us emails, IndieQuestPod@gmail.com, and you can find that amazing quest log at IndieQuestPod.com. Steve, where can they find you on the internet?
Twitch and Twitter is Blinkoom. Where can they find you, Seth?
You can find me on Twitter at Captain Drachma, and of course in the Polymedia Discord. Best place on the internet. And if you want to get in that Discord, head on over to Patreon, search Polymedia, and get into that tier that gets you in the Discord. I believe it's the first one. Come and chat with us. Josh, where can they find you?
You can find me at Frantic Society on Twitter. And speaking of the Polymedia Discord, we're part of the Polymedia Network. Go to polymedia.com. Go find awesome podcasts. There's a million of them on there. There's a nostalgia, movies, music. There's a tangentially related Dark Souls podcast that just came out. What's the name of that show? It's a great name, and it's not on the tip of my tongue right now. It's Vyar and
Bad Times and Briz, and it is something across the seas, but I cannot remember the first name.
Kindled Across the Sea. Great show. Look, the hot new show for you Souls-like fans. Go look up Kindled Across the Sea.
Kindled Across the Sea. Yeah, I know it's like that should be on the top of my head, but you know when it's a new name, it's just like it's not. I haven't said it out loud yet. You know, that's part of naming things. Anyway, go check that out or anything awesome on the Polymedia Network. So that's the end of our show today. Seth, why don't you put out some parting words for our folks out there?
I think what I want to hear from our folks is we need some emails, and we've gotten a couple recently that told us some games that we should play. So if there are games out there that are bangers that deserve to be on the quest log, send them to us, because sometimes it's just we don't think of certain bangers that aren't there. Like we haven't mentioned Cuphead a whole lot until this point. Some of the other games that we brought today. Send us an email, tell us some bangers that we should play, and we will get right on it.
Yeah.